This is Jason Reed Pratt, author of Cry of Justice. Have you been wincing at my horribly inefficient absolute newbie playstyle in Mark Herman's board game Churchill by GMT Games, and especially have been shouting silently at the screen, or perhaps even vocally, for Franklin Delano Roosevelt to get out of that wheelchair and start kicking? Me too! Fortunately, I have been thinking hard about how FDR should proceed, and I have come to the conclusion that everyone else on the planet can go rot. Also, I should stop splitting my focuses each turn, a piece of advice that frankly doesn't only apply to Franklin. But let us first recap what happened during and after the May 1943 conference. Winston Churchill won it pretty crushingly, discussing and winning overall command of both theaters, as well as the global issue topic with which he opened all the Western side nations into being politically colonized. He and Stalin wasted no time spreading out their political influence, but no fronts advanced in the West at all, partly due to a lack of focus by the Allies, and partly due to some improbably punchy defense by the Axis. Stalin won the nuclear research topic, again, allowing him to advance his spies to Phase 2, but FDR rolled high enough to keep the pace. The Western Allies, to be honest, have been pretty sloppy to just give 6 free points to Stalin, points which, unlike many others in this game, can never be taken back. In the Pacific, Stalin managed to win approval to declare war on Japan while his allies were bickering on other matters, but he badly underestimated the Imperial Japanese Army and couldn't break through their sterling defense in Manchuria. This miscalculation also means that the Japanese will be distracted for the rest of the game trying to stop him rather than focusing on his fellow allies, both of whom advanced a step, the CBI Theater into the Kra Isthmus and the Southwest Pac Theater into the Solomon Islands. Advancing into the Kra also wiped several of Stalin's partisan groups back into the bag, for now. This brings the United Kingdom, the green markers, to 32 points, and the USSR, the red markers, to 30 points. You can see me fixing a miscount error here for both players carried over from the previous episode. But despite Churchill technically leading, the two are actually tied because Churchill is more than 19 points ahead of the last place player, the United States, at a measly 2 points. This triggers the second place win rule, where whoever is in second teams their points with whoever is in third to oppose whoever is in first. But Stalin and FDR together only tally 32 points to Churchill's 32. Considering how far behind the US is, we can expect this second place rule to continue in effect for a while. For my pre-turn adjustments first, some more errors! FDR will get a free partisan roll this turn because I skipped his roll by accident last turn. He'll get at least 2 chips, maybe 3 if I roll greater than a... What? What the... what? I rolled an edge. Well, either face, 2 or 3 would fail the roll, so FDR only gets 2 chips. I'll plop those up here for later. Next, I accidentally deleted 2 naval supports which FDR should have been able to deploy last turn, so I'll hand those out now before I forget them again. He can deploy them to any front in any theater. Last, before the turn starts, I like to pass out the normal production chips, since often the card text requires allocating some production and it's easier to not forget this later if I can go ahead and place them appropriately. By the same token, since Stalin managed to put 3 naval supports into the Arctic last turn, he'll get the Arctic production each turn hereafter, until and unless the Axis randomly rolls to remove a naval support. As I go over to consider my goals this turn as FDR, I notice that the tabletop simulator, or perhaps this module, has bugged out somehow because it's dealing out the naval, and as I confirm later, the offensive support chips, flipped over to their multiplier sides and rotated upside down. I spent some time trying to fix this along the way, but I have failed so far. So you'll see me regularly fiddling with these chips this turn. So from Roosevelt's perspective, I'm way behind and pulling into turn 3 with only 10 turns maximum in the game, and no guarantee my allies might not roll fast enough to end the war before then. Although the Axis has been putting up an improbably good resistance so far, and that may end up buying me enough time to come back later. But how do I come back? My two basic strengths are that I come back strong late in the game, eroding the other leads, and I've got a lot of production. If I'm going to come back, however, I've got to advance a lot, and that means concentrating my massive production on trying to create breakthrough overruns each turn. Can I do this in the Western Front? No, not yet. Why? Because this front needs 5 naval supports, not just the usual 3 anywhere else, to get into Normandy, and 5 is the maximum naval support possible for any front, including this one. And the Kriegsmarine will always eliminate 1 naval support each turn. The upshot is that until I advance into the Bolero space, winning the Battle of the Atlantic, I can never do a 2-space overrun here. Neither can Winston, who would also benefit in scoring from this front, though not as much as me. I've already given the Mediterranean front enough naval support for Winston to invade Sicily and Italy safely. What was I thinking when I did that? But would I benefit from helping him do so? No, at most I only get 2 points from pushing all the way to the Alps, while Winston would get a total of 3 points, plus another 2 if he gets into Italy before I get us into France. The way these tracks work, the points are not additive. As you move along the track, the new points score. The old points go away. Winston and I score equally along the West Front track, except for a small 2-point bonus if I get us into Paris before Winston gets us into Rome. Helping Stalin's East Front doesn't benefit me at all. That leaves the Pacific Theater, where I notice Stalin and Winston are also focusing early. Stalin's Far Eastern Theater doesn't help me any, except so far as Stalin's advance into Omaha will weaken Japan's resistance against Winston and me for the rest of the game. Nor do I get the slightest points for helping support our drive across the CBI theater from India. On the other hand, neither Stalin nor even Winston get any points from my progress in the 2 Pacific fronts, although Winston and I can benefit equally from all 3 of our fronts getting into Japan. I can pick up 7 points by advancing across the Central Pacific Theater, but I can net 8 points in the South Pacific by reducing both Stalin's and Churchill's points as well as gaining mine. Obviously, I should be focusing my efforts here. What about the nuclear research? It really doesn't benefit me that much directly, and doesn't benefit me exclusively at all. It benefits Winston too, in tandem. I might actually be better off leaving this alone now, except I can expect Stalin to keep pushing for it because he gets free points that can never be taken away if he wins a discussion on it. And Stalin himself can always debate it unanswerably and strongly without risk, even if he isn't at the conference. So I won't propose it myself anymore until later in the game. But if someone else proposes it, I should try to make sure that Stalin at least doesn't get it. But if he does, then I make sure I advance as far as he does. I can only do that if I've got at least 3 production remaining, and the other 2 players will be eating at my production. So for my actual topical strategies, I need to be choosing a couple of topics to focus on, ones that will generate production for me, except I don't know that there are any, or at least protect my production for myself. Which ones? Well, that will depend a lot on the special strengths of the staff I draw each turn. And it would be better if I don't randomly throw away someone who could be helpful in my focus strategy now. Which means it's time to stop randomly drawing a staff member to sacrifice in the agenda phase. I should make a rational choice about that. Which means the other 2 guys get to do that too. Fine. It's time to stop being the nice guy. Let's go. With that, it's time to start the turn by flipping the deck over, drawing off last turn, and revealing Turn 3, August 1943. The Quebec Conference, codenamed Quadrant. Historical variant, B. Much to FDR's delight, it's now time for dissent in Churchill's ranks to place a UK-directed offensive on the table for discussion. Although Stalin always gets an extra convoy now, the Germans still have a chance at destroying the usual convoy. On a roll of 4, 5, or 6, they'll sink it, but with a 3, the convoy squeaks through. Maximum natural production for Stalin this turn, plus whatever he can pick up at the conference. Also, he's back to being active at the conference now. In Quebec? Yeah, whatever. FDR's delight turns to chagrin as General Groves demands that nuclear research be discussed for advancement. Now Now I'll have to either let Stalin get another 3 points or I'll be distracted trying to prevent it. Plus, this may stop any overrun attempt this summer. Fortunately, the Axis event requires the U.S. to devote one production to the Southwest Pacific Theater instead of somewhere less profitable for FDR. But it's also a little unfortunate too, because I would have preferred to focus on the Central Pacific next in order to avoid the inter-service rivalry penalty, even temporarily. What penalty is that? We'll get to that later. Last on the card, we don't actually roll for random partisans this time. Instead, Tito comes to power in Yugoslavia, which will give Stalin a free point, but no one else, when I get around to it. I've forgotten to grant him the point yet. Consequently, only FDR gets random partisans this turn. Accidentally forgotten last turn. The first one randomly rolls to Denmark, which doesn't help FDR, but ticks down Churchill's score a point. The second one goes to Bulgaria, with the same result, but worse, since it doesn't help FDR, but also doesn't hurt Stalin, really. He already has a 3-point political marker there, overriding the partisan marker. What this does do is open up Bulgaria to political change, potentially, although that will take a while, assuming anyone cares to try. Consequently, I still need to give Stalin his Tito point, but I won't end up adjusting this properly until later in the turn. That ends the card events, so it's time to draw and consider the staffs. On an odd-numbered turn, all surviving staff members are reshuffled back into the deck. Here are FDR's 7, sorted out by strength. If you're thinking, wait, in the previous episodes it was 6, that's because I randomly drew off a card for the agenda segment. I'm going to be doing that intentionally for everyone now and onward. I've got an admirably strong hand this turn, but none of the strong ones give a hoot about the topics I want to focus on. On the other hand, that makes it easier for me to choose a strong card to try setting the agenda with. Either Henry or Cordell would work for this, so I'll send in one of them. Notice that he goes in flipped over hidden. I'll have to play the characters narratively as not knowing who the other characters are choosing. A wide spread of strong and weak, giving me an average hand, but at least they seem useful for topics. Except for Sir John Tovey here, Commander-in-Chief of the Home Fleet. Well, no, he'd be helpful too, since Sicily is an amphibious space and he'd generate offensive support for that. But should I be concentrating there? I'm not sure yet. More to the point, if I'm going to make my hand a little stronger on average, I should get rid of a weak card here, even though that means I won't likely win the agenda phase. But he'll bulk up to 3 with our Imperial agenda power, and that will win if both the other players choose to sacrifice a weak card for a stronger discussion crew. Also, my 2 weakest cards will bulk up to 3 strength if I play them correctly in discussion, but he'll never be better than a 2. So I'll go with him now. Bringing... Oh gosh, I love Stalin so much. My hand is freaking amazing this time! Yeah, it makes me scared what I'm likely to draw next season. But for this season, the obvious choice is Semyon Budyani, because his ability is to get super weak if I'm active in the conference, which I am. But his ability means nothing in the agenda segment, so he juices back up to a mighty 5. I'd be insane not to shoot him while I can. I mean not to play him here. Go save your life and be useful, Semyon. If you're even slightly better at this game than I am, you'll have noticed that I forgot to roll for Stalin's murderous paranoia this turn, which would affect relative strengths in the agenda phase, like rolling for his chief of staff strength. nor am I going to remember later until it's far too late. So, I'll be making a note that on turn 4, Stalin must roll twice for paranoia. And if he fails his first roll, he'll have to roll twice again on turn 5, and so on until he gets through 2 rolls in a turn, passing both or passing the first one. All players have secretly chosen their cards. So I flip them over and... Oops, we have a tie between Stalin and Roosevelt, even though Churchill's card strengthens up to 3. How are such ties resolved? In this case, starting with Stalin, each player chooses whether or not to substitute their leader card, if he's active at this conference, which both Stalin and Roosevelt are. The first player to sub in a leader breaks the tie. If no one volunteers, then FDR gets to use the special U.S. Arsenal of Democracy power to choose who wins the tie, including himself in this case. Essentially, this means that if Stalin chooses not to sub in, FDR automatically wins without having to sub in. Subbing in won't guarantee I win the agenda, and since I see that nuclear chip starting in the middle, I'd like to save myself for later to secure it at least, since I cannot be debated if I advance that topic. An easy and permanent 3 points is worth giving an extra topical pick to Franklin. This means FDR breaks the tie in his favor to win the agenda segment for turn 3. FDR gets to pick the first topic. The basic problem is that no one in my staff is strong on any topic I'm going to care about now, except for Arnold down there, who's weak on everything but the nuclear topic. I should focus on trying to secure that thing so Stalin won't get the points. Meanwhile, what's the best way to protect our resources? Distract the others with topics they'd rather not lose. I have some ideas, but that'll depend largely on what they pick during their rounds. For my first pick, then, I'll just choose something that everyone will agree about leaving alone, probably. Strategic materials. I hate that UK-directed offensive is on the table, because now I've either got to fight to secure what should have been used by us, or I let someone else take 2 of my production for their offense. Maybe this is how Franklin has felt. The only topic I'm really strong about with this hand is protecting our resources, which doesn't gain me anything, and Pacific leadership. If I discuss this and secure it again, then I'll generate some extra punch for my fronts. For that matter, maybe I should hedge my bets discussing European leadership too? No, don't get too greedy. I've really got to work on getting my directive offensive chip back. I think my best way of protecting myself will be to propose a United States direct offensive. But of course, since I'm the low man on the agenda this turn, all my topics go straight to the middle of the table, so I'll need to rearrange them a bit, for convenience. Obviously, securing the nuclear research will be a priority. I'll get a little extra offense this turn for my Japanese front by playing this guy, so I should play to maximize that thrust. I might have proposed Pacific leadership just to try to pick up some spare offense for that purpose. But it's already on the table, along with everything I would normally propose. Well, one thing certain is to propose trying to break through Manchuria again, which, like almost everything else, will go to the center of the table, where I'll have to sort things around myself for convenience. And since I have some strength on production, maybe a production chip. Maybe Winston's? Why? Because he is jockeying me for top score, and I want to pull decisively ahead, and taking production from him will hamper him proportionately more than taking it from Franklin. Oops, got to remember that I don't put this in the center dog pile. It actually goes on my side of the table. Curious. I had been going to choose the directed offenses for the UK and the USSR. One of those is already on the table, so I'm going to choose the other one. As for what else? And how about the 2-2 polymill chip? That's potentially 6 points and should serve as a nice distraction for the others to quandary over. That sets the agenda for this conference, and the proposers go to the discard pile. I might as well set up two options for naval or offensive support and give those to Churchill, since whatever else happens this turn, he did start the turn in control of both overall theaters. With FDR winning the agenda, clockwise around the table, Churchill is the first one to play. What a mess. And I can't secure anything at my seat either. Well, I might as well start with Lord Mountbatten, Supreme Allied Commander of Southeast Asia, who's a weak card unless he's advancing the Pacific leadership. This will save my stronger cards for later, and with Franklin in position to play the final cards of the turn, I'd like him to burn something fighting me on this. Or even Stalin for that matter, so that I have better chances to get our production off his track. Meh. I can either play a card strong enough to pull this onto my side of the table, which won't secure it, and where if I win it I get one extra support in the Far East for winning its discussion, or I can leave it alone and focus on keeping Winston's production, which I can use more flexibly anywhere, and which will directly cripple him. No, that's not even a choice. I'll pass. You wanted leadership and its responsibilities, Winston? I won't fight you over it. Have fun. What? I don't even... What? Well, Churchill is trying to figure out how he somehow lost by winning Pacific leadership again. I'll sort out the center table to make the options clearer. There. Now, should I go ahead and secure A-bomb research? Or should I try to secure Winston's production chip? Or... Wait, what? Wait, what was this? I was away getting some vodka. What is that I see hiding under Franklin's polymeal chip? A Soviet offensive? What? What insolence is this? That the rich capitalist bankers would insist that I help their offenses when the Soviet people are barely eating bread made of tree bark. This will not stand. My first priority must be to neutralize that as quickly as possible. Voroshilov, member of the High Council? You will weaken once I play myself, and I'd rather play myself on the nuclear chip, so go out there and ensure that Russian heroes will get their food and fuel for this season. I don't even care if I lose the conference again so long as my production stays with us. That's a strong card burned by Stalin, and I see no reason to fight it. I have my own worries about shepherding our production back from you, Joseph. Among other things, I won't debate this. Wow, trolling my allies is paying off. Let's see if I can keep that going. I could secure that polymeal chip, but I'd rather use Cordell Hull to yank Britain's directed offense far up my side of the table. If I can't use Stalin's directed offense, well... No, I will not let this... Sir Henry Wemyss should be the obvious choice here, but he isn't strong enough to neutralize the chip. Ernest Bevin, Minister of Labor and National Service, has a natural 5 strength, and his weakness doesn't matter this turn. If I play him now, the other two may think I don't have any other cards as big remaining, which I don't technically, but I've got 2 4-power cards who can pump up to 5 under circumstances I expect will occur. So, go neutralize that offense chip. I could pass now because I've debated a topic since my previous round. But should I? No, I've got to get our production off Stalin's track before he secures it on his own chair. And that's the job of Oliver Littleton, Minister of Production, who pumps up to 5 strength if UK production is the topic. No, my Tory comrade. Alexander, son of Vasily, chief of the General Staff of the Red Army, go niet that move. Your 4 will also go to 5 that way, and the chip comes back here, where it started. Plus, I get a bit of extra offense automatically from my Far East theater. Perhaps I will use your production to help us there too, Winston. Should I pass now? Nothing I care about is in danger anymore. I've got 4 cards to Franklin's 5 and Winston's 3. I could go ahead and act, but if I can save as many staff members for reactive debating, they'll be stronger thanks to our Niet ability. Yes, I think I'll pass this round. Clever, Uncle Joe. Now, should I try to get the A-bomb research in my direction? My guy, who's strong at that, is still pretty weak, and I'd only be giving Joseph an opportunity to act more strongly with a yet. Should I pull my directed offense to me? No, I don't think so. That won't be sure to provoke a response from anyone. Better to take an average-powered card like Claude Wickard, Secretary of Agriculture, who isn't strong at anything on the table this turn, and prod Winston again with taking his directed offense. Ah! Enough of this nonsense. Sir Henry C.B. Wemyss, Military Secretary for the Secretary of State for War? Really? That's his title? This is exactly your specialty, a UK offensive on the US track. And you're just strong enough to take it back to my side of the table. Now, here. I've got 2 cards left, and my allies have a lot, especially Franklin. I can pass this round, and I am definitely going to. I've got to play something this time. I didn't get a chance to debate. I've got a specific use for everyone except for Boris Shaposhnikov, Chief of the General Staff of the Red Army. I don't think any production will be getting into the U.S. track this turn. But what you can do is exact some revenge for Franklin daring to put our meager resources at risk for his offense. Go get that U.S. directed offense. Obviously, I'm going to oppose this with Secretary Morgenthau, who doesn't have a global issue to discuss this turn. And since I debated that, I feel no great compunction to act on my turn. Pass to Winston. Ugh! I was hoping he'd burn another card. As it is, I'll have to play a card now, one of my 2 remaining. I still haven't gotten our production off the Soviet track, so go get it, Sir John Dill. Well, I'd like to get that back. My cards are either too weak to be effective, or I need them somewhere else. Pass. Do you want people to leave your production alone, Winston? All right, there you go. I am not deaf to your blatant attempts at irony, Franklin. As for John Dill, he rolls a 6, and so doesn't die. Good. Okay, enough fooling around. I'm getting that A-bomb research home personally, subbing in for Georgy Melenkov or whoever that is. Due to my special power, no one can debate me on this, and since no one got it off center table, it goes directly home and off the table for discussion. Well, drat. I should have stopped trolling Winston earlier and focused on trying to neutralize that threat. Too late now. But what should my little one-power Henry Arnold do? I can't get anything off their sides of the table with him, or not anything that would cause them to lose anything. I could pull our directed offense a little up our side of the table, but that wouldn't help us, and would only inspire one of them to debate it back much more strongly toward themselves, especially Stalin's crew. They can yet, and so they get an extra point for debating. No, the better choice is to use Arnold to threaten something on the center of the table that would take an importance away. Strategic materials? That takes away production from each of them. That would get a reaction. But do I care who of them plays a card? Yes, I would really prefer Stalin to play a card. That means I should threaten something he specifically will care about, but that Winston won't care about. That means threatening his declaration of war with Japan. I'm sure not touching that. Good job, Franklin. You diseased pickpocket. Well, I can choose burial to bring it back. Center table. Chips which activate only at center table can be stopped there at the discretion of whoever is moving the chip. Or I can play a stronger card without risk of burial shooting anyone. But I might need that stronger card at the end. It might be worth the 1 in 6 chance of 9mm brain hemorrhage. So, burial it is. But now that I've seen them, and even though I can stop this topic center table, do I want to? Currently, Winston is winning the conference with 3 topics, which I strongly suspect Franklin will try to take as he plays cards unanswered at the end. I don't think he'll be able to get my directed offense back. So if I have any chance at winning this conference, for a permanent 5 points. Perhaps I should go ahead and take this topic onto my track? I won't be able to invade Manchuria if it isn't center table, but it will count as a 1 topic. No. Tempting, but no. It is more important for me to get into Manchuria. Well, this is the end of the conference for me. I only have one more card, and I have to play it. Sir Charles Portal, Chief of the Air Staff. The best way to protect my resources from Franklin raiding them completely, at least a little, is to make him burn a card protecting something he cares about, and I don't think he'll care as much about that 2-2 polymill chip as his directed offense chip. Or I could take that offense. But I'll pass for now. You'll see why later. Yeah, I'll pass too, for flexibility later. What? You forgot to check whether Burns had a heart attack. Did I? Well, I'll roll that when we're done with the conference. I'll make a note. And since I debated after my previous round, I'll exercise my option to pass this round. Honestly, it doesn't matter whether I grab my offense or Winston's. I'm going to go get his, though, just because I'm a little less sure Stalin wouldn't try to net me if I took my offense instead. He might let Britain's pass to me undebated. Not because it makes any difference to him which one he gets, but for psychological revenge. If I'm right, he'll pass and go for my directed offense. If I just realized I only get one more chance to play a card with an extra point for net strength during this conference, and this is it. Wait, no. No, I see his trap. He wants me to burn my last card now so that he can take my declaration of war away unanswered. Then I am stuck trying to punch through the Germans before my allies have opened up the Western Front. He has already once tried to take it away, so I know he has it in mind. Subtle, Franklin. Very subtle. I pass. Exactly as I hoped. He got blinded by the hope of taking my directed offense out of revenge. And now he'll have to do it 1 point less strong without the buff from his net power. Because he can't pass anymore, he has to play his last card somewhere. This gives me a better chance to parry whatever he tries, if it's something I care about. And if it's not, well, I get a final play unanswered to yank something else off Winston's track if I can. His scheme is even more subtle than I thought, because now I definitely have to play my card without its extra point from the net power. And whatever I play it on, he'll just pass and then take my declaration of war away. Unless I play on something he cares enough about to force him to fight it and burn his last card. That is pretty obviously his directed offense chip, which is also the most vulnerable chip on Winston's side, which will also give me the best chance of keeping it on my side after Roosevelt's riposte. As I expected, he couldn't see past his revenge when he could have had the same effect more surely by evading me on Winston's chip. Oh well. Harold Nichols, you'll be the last actor at this conference, and since I'm still active, you've got a strength of 4. Enough to get our directed offense back onto our side of the table. Just as I planned. My declaration of war is safe. Oh, Gregory Kulik, I am sorry to have put you in Barry's crosshairs, but, oh good, he rolled a 4. You'll get to live. До свидания. Oh, and I forgot to put an offensive support from one of my played staff members onto my Far Eastern Front, so I'll do that now before I forget again. With that... Oh, wait, I think I'm supposed to check someone for a heart attack. The conference ends, and perhaps not too surprisingly, since he also won the agenda, FDR won the conference with 3 topics. Everyone else won 2 topics. Even Stalin, because, as pointed out while strategizing, his war declaration doesn't count unless it ends in the center of the table, but then it doesn't count as a topic he won either, just like last turn. Time to resolve various decision segments. No, first you need to check if Henry Arnold survived its discussion. 5. He's fine. Carry on. Yes. Oh, terrible voice impression of Roosevelt in my head. A current tally of points on the board compared to my notes suggests I've shorted Stalin and Churchill each a point somehow.
Hey, is that because I'm telling you what to do? I'm not a gangster puppet, you know.
And so before we start adjusting scores the rest of the turn, things stand at FDR in last place with 2 points, Churchill in first place with 32 points, but Stalin winning in second place with 31 points. Because Churchill is more than 19 points ahead of last place, but isn't outscoring both second and third place together anymore. That means the second place winner rule is currently triggered, and Stalin is leading a block with Roosevelt against Churchill.
That is 1000% insane.
Well, you are a good semi-socialist pig, of course. The zeroth decision segment, so to speak, is giving FDR 3 points for winning the conference. My win just increased. Thank you, Franklin. For the first segment, directed offenses must be placed, starting clockwise from the conference winner. But Churchill didn't win any directed offenses. Stalin won his own, and here comes a subtle rule quirk. If you win your own directed offense, you must still dedicate 2 resources to a front of your choice. And I was going to do that anyway at the Far East Front. Because of the rules for production allocation, this won't actually resolve until a little later. Roosevelt won 2 directed offenses, his own, and 1 from the UK.
This is a little tricky. I'd prefer to push on the Central Pacific next, but with some of my production already dedicated to the Southwest Pac, I suppose I had better play the odds. This will be a temporary problem if I do win the advance, but not in the long run.
More about that problem later. The next segment, any conditional issues in the center of the board now trigger. So Stalin gets permission, if only tacitly, to try invading Manchuria again. Next, normal production chips would usually be handed out here, but I prefer to do that earlier so that commitments can be tracked better, like U.S. production being sent by the card event to the Southwest Pacific Front. This is where I hand out strategic material chips to everyone though, since it stayed center table. Players now start assigning their productions, along with any support they're due, starting clockwise from the conference runner. Therefore, Churchill starts this turn. The event card didn't force me to put production somewhere this turn, so I can skip that. Next though, I have to use 2 of my own scant production to put 2 supports on the Southwest Pacific Front. Because of the way the rules work, I add naval support if the next space is an invasion, which it is, but only up until 3 navals, and Franklin already has 4 there. So, in fact, I must add both my productions here as offensive support. Everything else I'm putting as offensive support in the CBI theater. I don't have enough to try for 2-space breakthrough, but now that I look at it, I would need naval support there for that anyway. And in fact, I'll be needing that soon here, so I'll put my theater support to Navy. That includes extra support for having one discussion on leading this theater again. However, I got annoyed and/or confused and added 1 too many naval supports. In fact, I not only assigned naval support to the CBI front from European Theater Command, which I should not have done, but then I tried to assign Eurotheater's offensive support too, when that should have just been one or the other. Just like I could assign 1 naval or 1 offensive support for starting the turn in Pacific Theater Command, but not both. I'll have to make a note for next turn to adjust appropriately, deleting a naval support at CBI. The offensive support for Sicily is a legitimate play. Now for Stalin's allocations. I have to put 2 production to offensive support in Manchuria, and naturally I'll try to do a 2-space over around here. Although eventually I'll need some naval support for invading Japan. I thought about adding a bit more naval support in the Arctic Circle in case the Huns get lucky, but they have a small chance there. On my turn, I've got 2 naval supports left over from last turn, which I can place anywhere. I'll freshen up my Pacific fleets, and then ascend a fleet to the Atlantic to keep that up to speed for later. My directed offensive and the card event means I must send 3 supports to the Southwest Pac. Is that enough? Not for a decisive 2-space breakthrough, but Stalin won the nuclear issue, so he'll definitely move up a notch there. I had better dedicate 3 productions to automatically succeed in my research there too. Oh, and I have that poly mill chip.
I'm still pretty sure to advance here if I sacrifice one more offense support to put production into activating that chip. Those are raw points I can place on the board.
The next segment is A-bomb research, which, as noted, both Stalin and FDR automatically succeed at, although Stalin gets 3 more points for doing so. The last decision segment is global issues, which wasn't debated. And that means it's time for the war phase. Everyone gets 1 free partisanship to place, and since FDR has most of all kinds of polymill chips, then he gets to place his partisans first.
I was tempted to put them all into the colonies, but then I decided I'd rather nix 2 of Stalin's points too. So I actually put those 2 into neutralizing his partisans in Eastern Europe, plus 1 in a colony.
This tickled me so much, reducing both Stalin and Churchill by 2 points, that I kind of forgot that Roosevelt's partisans neutralized themselves too, so he only has 1 surviving one to go up a point. Not up 3 points. But don't worry, I catch this before the end of the turn and adjust it. Churchill puts 1 in Denmark, and I honestly don't know what I thought I was doing there. If he had neutralized FDR's move on the colony of Malaya, he could have gotten back 2 points easy. I was getting tired by that time of night, I guess. 1 point up for Churchill. Now that the CBI front has passed into the Kra Peninsula, Stalin can put partisan groups there without fear of the front rooting them out. So naturally he does so. 1 point up for Stalin, -2 for Churchill. FDR is the only player with political markers this turn, and since Churchill is still shutting down their placement into the colonies with his global issue of colonialism, FDR can only put them into Persia and the Middle East. That negates the points from the partisan group, but adds 3 points each for a net increase of 2 times 2 equals 4 points. This is where I check my math on the polymill scoring and adjust to give the United States their proper 10 points so far. 1 point for a non-poly partisanship, plus 3 points times 2 poly markers equals plus 6 for a running total of 7 points, plus 3 points for winning a conference equals 10. Now it's time for the automatic war. 1 German reserve to the Eastern Front. The Kriegsmarine goes out to eat a naval support. 4 more German reserves to the Eastern Front, all of which are a waste, but those are the rules. The Italians up to eat an offensive support in Sicily, and a final reserve randomly rolled into the Atlantic to stop any chance of Bolero. Those Germans and the Kriegsmarine withdraw on a job well done. The Italians withdraw on a job well done. The Eastern Front Germans wonder why they haven't smashed all of Russia yet. And we're down to the Pacific Theater. Wait. The Italians did smack away the offensive support, but Churchill still has a front there worth 2 points. I should have rolled that. I'll have to make a note to do so at the start of turn 4. The Axis won't have it all their own way down here. Still, 2 Imperial armies go up to eliminate a couple of offensive supports on Stalin's Far Eastern Front. The Navy doesn't sally out this season. 1 Army Reserve goes to stop any movement into the Marshall Islands, and 1 goes to French Indochina to parry one of the offensive supports. Central Pacific can't move, but Southwest Pacific gets an automatic move from having enough support, and so enters Papua New Guinea. This gives 5 points each to Stalin and to Churchill. Why? Because of the inter-service rivalry rule. If one of the Pacific fronts is more than 1 space ahead of the other, then the U.S. gets embarrassed by the admirals and generals politically infighting each other. As long as FDR tightens up or eliminates that difference before the end of the game, though, those points will go away again. Next, the CBI front. Churchill needs a 6 or less, and another natural 10! How does that keep happening? Is it a bug in Tabletop Simulator? Well, evidently not, because I didn't roll a single 10 during that tantrum. The Axis powers are just that awesome in this particular run of the game. Last but not least, Stalin's Far East Front. He has enough for an automatic advance, and to try for a breakthrough, but he'll need to roll a 2 or a 1 for that, and 7. Almost a 3, but that wouldn't have won it either. The war declaration never needs proposing and agreeing on again. I should have also permanently eliminated one of the Japanese army reserves, but I'll make a note to do that at the start of turn 4. That ends the turn. A recheck of my math indicates Churchill should have 33 points. 5 because of the U.S. inter-service rivalry, plus 3 because MacArthur hasn't returned yet equals 8. Plus 4 from 2x2 clean colonies equals 12. Plus 2 1-point partisans without polymarkers equals 14. Plus 6 from 2 3-point political markers equals 20. Plus 10 points from 2 5-point global issue wins equals 30. Plus 3 points for having won a conference equals 33. The USSR has scored 5 points for the inter-service rivalry, plus 3 because MacArthur hasn't returned yet equals 8, plus 2 1-point partisans without political markers equals 10, plus 6 from 2 3-point political markers equals 16, plus 5 points from a conference win, he gets more points than they do, equals 21, plus 9 points from 3 3-point nuclear research wins, wow, equals 30, plus 3 points because the United States doesn't have the A-bomb yet, plus 5 points because the Western Allies haven't entered Germany yet, and that equals 38 points. The U.S. score hasn't changed since the last time I double-checked it. It's still 10 points. Although Stalin is in first place right now, he'd be wise to start hanging back more because he's still more than 19 points ahead of the United States, meaning Churchill is currently winning in second place with his 33 points plus the United States 10, for a total of 43. Will the U.S. be able to keep surging up their points, having changed their strategies? Will Stalin and Churchill stay far enough ahead to keep jockeying for the second place win rule? They've learned quickly from FDR's change in conference strategy and support deployment. Will that blunt the U.S. coming back from behind? The Japanese have started to crumble, and the Allied steamrollers are on the way. But both Japan and Germany have rolled a lot of high defense scores in this game. Has it been enough, early enough, to derail the Allies into a brokered peace? And could that eventually trigger the third place win rule? As we go into November of 1943, one thing is sure. I will lose twice. Doom, 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 doom,